Welcome back to the South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast by Ohio State fans, for Ohio State fans. From the West Coast, I'm your host, Zach Moore. Today is Thursday, September 12th, 2024, and I'm very happy to be joined once again by fellow South Stands contributor Paige Van Horn from Denver. PBH, how's it going, buddy?
It's well, buddy. Another scorching 90-degree day here in Denver, but, it's going to be no complaining Van Horn on this week's podcast.
I love it. Okay, can't wait to hear that.
Sunny and beautiful.
Okay. We are also pleased to be joined by our man on the ground in Cleveland, Chad Plummer. CP, what's the word from the 216?
Shit. What's up, boys? The 216 is all good, man.
Yeah.
Happy to be on board with you guys. Kind of bummed out there's no game this weekend, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, well, as you've noted, the Buckeyes have this week off. This is one of two off weeks for the program during the 2024 season, but I think there's still plenty for the three of us to talk about, fellas. I want to have a look back at Ohio State's dominant 56-zip win over Western Michigan, and it sounds like Mr. PVH is going to have a more charitable grade for our Buckeyes from that performance than he did last week.
Don't get your hopes up.
I also want to spend some time exploring a question that I ended Sunday's pod with. And related to that, there is one prognostication from our preseason prediction pod I want to discuss, because I feel like even though the season is only 3 weeks old, there's some new information that might have us rethinking that prediction. Finally, there are a couple of interesting games involving Big Ten teams on Saturday that I'd love to have a look at before I let you guys go tonight. But first, let's have a look back at Ohio State's 56-0 drubbing of Western Michigan last Saturday. It was the first shutout pitched by the Buckeye defense since the Silver Bullets blanked Cincinnati 42-zip back in 2019. I was actually at that game. The Buckeyes held the Broncos to 99 yards of total offense, 0.9 yards per carry in the run game, and only 6 first downs. On offense, the Buckeyes amassed 683 total yards, 273 on the ground, and 6 rushing touchdowns. Another huge game by freshman phenom Jeremiah Smith, 119 yards receiving on 5 catches for Smith. That included that 70-yard catch and run for a touchdown in the first quarter, which is gorgeous. Finally, Will Howard finished 18 of 26 for 292 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, 1 passing and 1 rushing. PVH, I want to start with you. What stood out to you from the Buckeyes' performance in that game?
Well, come on, let's be honest. They clearly heard my rant and
yes, they did.
Righted the ship, for crying out loud. That was exactly what they're supposed to do. And I thought, I think we all expected that against Akron. So it was good to see. It was, just thorough domination from the opening get, right?
Yep.
You go 3 and out, and then you score a touchdown, and then essentially at that point the game is over. A few things that stood out for me. Mikey Corcoran, and this was one of the things. This was actually out of my 5 points last weekend, the one that I was, least worried about. But man, the play calling, the just sort of the schemes, the ingeniousness, is that really a word? I'm not sure. By Chip Kelly.
We'll accept it.
Yeah, man. And it was now there, might have been a libation involved, but it was hard to know where the bloody ball was, right? After the snap. And I don't even think the cameraman really had any clue. I just thought the offensive game plan, the schemes, the play calls were super creative stuff we haven't seen before, things that we were expecting from Chip Kelly.
Yep.
And then really, opened up the run game, which was awesome to see. That was firing on all cylinders. And then, outside of the Jeremiah Smith stuff, which I think is just going to become a broken record for us, right?
I think
how exceptional that guy is. It was good to see, the two guys, I think probably, outside of McLaughlin center, it's not that I sit there and watch offensive line play, but the two guys that came over in the portal that had the most hype. We finally had a Downs sighting on defense.
Yeah, he was
right?
good.
He's been a little quiet, and it was great to see, him make an impact on the game. And then Judkins, right? Which I think goes back to the Chip Kelly piece, right? Like, man, that guy was, he looked as advertised coming out of the SEC. So, those were the things that stood out to me. Defense is great.
Yep.
But, I think they handled business, right? It's like, if we're going to grade it, right, on the Ohio State scale, pass, fail, it's a pass. That's what you're supposed to do. I'm not going to say that they're an A. And even if they were an A, they're starting from an F minus. So, 2 games in, they're sitting at a solid C. It's hard to recover from that, but they've got a lot of games left. But it was a fun game. It was good to see them, execute the way they did.
I love it. All right, CP, what stood out to you from that performance on Saturday?
Well, as I stated, and everybody was like, especially at Mikey Corcoran, what's up with the play call? I'm like, dude, Chip Kelly's not going to come out in the first game and start like just pulling out the, middle of his playbook. You know what I mean? Come on, dude. Like, I knew the guy, like the dude is like, he knows what's up. Play calling, I agree with Paige there, was great. Jeremiah Smith, he's the real deal. I'm impressed with Will Howard and how he can throw the ball. Run game stepped up a little bit. Quite a bit, actually. But my biggest thing was the defense. It's crazy what we have going on. You've got, like, when Burke got up, like that Jermaine Matthews, that kid's going to be a stud.
Yeah.
Real good. Cade McDonald, defensive line, that kid wrecks. Like, he's going to be a baller.
I agree.
Reese.
Yes.
Arvell Reese, that kid is probably the best linebacker from, like, all-around linebacker that we have. And there's no way that he can be off the field when we get into the thick of, season, Big Ten play. And then there's, Tyleek Williams just looked great. Gabe Powers is even fantastic, man. It's just like I'm very, very happy with our defense. And, the portal has been very kind to us. Look at the tight end,
Kaczmarek. Yeah, Kaczmarek. Yeah.
Kaczmarek. That kid looked solid, man. I'm just, I'm super excited. That's
nice.
One thing I like to say, super excited. But, there's just a lot of things I could
You're
go on.
super
I
freak.
could spend the next, super freak, super excited. I could seriously go on, the next, 25 minutes, just, things that stood out to me. But the performance overall stood out to me was just, I think this team is hungry, and it's only going to get better and better and better as the season moves along. It's my 50 cent.
I like it.
Right there.
I spent over 20 minutes breaking this game down on Sunday's pod, so I'm not going to repeat a bunch of what I said. I do want to echo, CP, what you just said about Arvell Reese. Because I did actually rewatch the game, and there were two observations that stood out to me on the rewatch, and one of them was Arvell Reese. I think he's firmly established himself as the third linebacker to behind Cody Simon and Sonny Styles. I think sideline to sideline, he's their fastest linebacker, and he is violent at the point of attack. When he hits you, you go down. Now, Cody Simon had a nice game as well after missing the opener. He started the game with a sack to end Western Michigan's first possession of the game. He actually finished as Ohio State's highest graded defender, according to PFF, in that game. But there were 2 plays in the open field. When I rewatched the game, there were 2 plays in the open field where Simon looked like he had cement in his cleats, and he could not get to the ball carrier. But I remember thinking on both plays that Arvell Reese probably makes those. And now, I think Cody Simon is going to be a really valuable linebacker for those fist fights in a phone booth with Iowa and Michigan. But I think Reese is going to be a huge asset to Jim Knowles and James Laurinaitis against the type of speed and skill the Buckeyes are going to see against the likes of Oregon and potentially USC if they see the Trojans in the Big Ten title game, and then certainly in the playoffs. So I'm with you, CP. That's a good call out there. Reese really stood out to me, both watching the game live and then on the rewatch. And then one other quick observation. Have you guys noticed that Seth McLaughlin, through 2 games, 0 issues with the shotgun snaps? Remember in the CFP semis when he was playing with Alabama against Michigan? He really struggled with the shotgun snaps. Whatever was going on for him at Bama is not an issue for him at Ohio State. So kudos to him for working on that.
I don't think he liked Jalen.
Well, yeah. So, it was interesting because I made that observation on X, and then Dave Biddle, of all people, commented on it and said that there were some cadence issues last year with Jalen Milroe that were the kind of at the root of the snap issues with McLaughlin, which I thought was pretty interesting. Ryan Day said earlier in his press conference that McLaughlin has become this calming presence on the offensive line. He loves his experience. He's kind of plug and play leader for the offense. He's been a huge upgraded center for them. And if you consider, both how well he's played and what the need was at the offensive line, I think you could probably make a strong argument that after Will Howard, McLaughlin has been the most valuable player that the Buckeyes landed from the portal. And I know we got Caleb Downs. I know we have Judkins. But those guys, to me, were more like luxury items for this team than absolute needs. And don't get me wrong, I'm stoked that they're here. They're going to have a big hand in what happens this season for Ohio State. But just considering the need at offensive line and how poorly they played at center last year, McLaughlin, huge acquisition for this team. Paige, I want to kick it back to you. Any other observations from last Saturday you'd like to share?
Yeah, you're going to take me down that negative whole road, PBH, but it just speaks to just the terribleness of how we're doing on our offensive line recruiting. But yeah, I mean, you're right. And it's hard. It's one of those things, if you're watching it real time, and I didn't watch a replay. But, yeah, I mean, those are the most important guys, right? I mean, the offensive, defensive line, you're not winning shit without, dominant, guys in the trenches. So, huge pickup. But it's just not like something that I'm going to sit there and I don't even know his number, right? Like I couldn't even tell you if he was on the field or wasn't on the field. However, yeah, super, super impactful. It's funny you said, like, I kind of even, when I said, the guys in the portal, I was like, yeah, shit, Will Howard came over in the portal too.
Yeah.
And I know we're going to talk about Michigan and Texas, but it is, I mean, there's impactful guys that, for as much as we brought back, the guys that we got in the portal, you can make an argument, man, like, well, there's no argument. It's super duper important. They're playing huge, huge roles for the Buckeyes.
Absolutely. Yeah, they only went out and got 7 kids in the portal. Meanwhile, they lost, I believe, 25. They lost 25 in the portal. They only got 7, but the 7 that they got were among the best players available, and they were very targeted in how they approached the portal, which I really appreciate. CP, I'm going to kick this back to you. Any other observations from last Saturday you'd like to share?
One real quick. You know how I've been big on CJ Hicks. Obviously, he's just not like, he's picking up so everything I've been reading, Knowles wants him on the field. So he's going to get set up packages where he's more of a edge rusher.
Yeah.
The kid's speed, there's not many, I don't even know if, probably outside of somebody, he's probably one of the best, between him and JT and Sawyer. But so, it's a shame that the kid's just not panning out, but I think they're going to get him on the field, more packages the rush. And I agree with you on Simon. He's just but he is he's the vocal leader of that defense. He's our quarterback back there. So, I mean, he did look like he had concrete in his boots. So, but, yeah.
Just on those 2 plays, he's really great in between the tackles, right? I mean, kind of in the tackle box, he's the guy you want. And there'll be games like that where they're going to have to win a line of scrimmage game, like against Iowa and Michigan. And I think Simon will be really valuable to them in those games. Yeah, Hicks is in a tough spot, right? Because there are 3 linebackers that are clearly better than him. And, maybe he would be a valuable kind of edge rusher, but there's a lot of depth there too. I mean, they've got, 4 or 5 guys as edge rushers that are really, really good and already very established. So he's in a tough spot. I heard that Knowles wants to keep him at linebacker. They feel like they're going to need the depth there, but yeah, not the ascension of Reese. The arrival of Reese has been bad news for CJ Hicks. Unfortunate for him.
Yeah, your boy CJ, the new Steve Bellisari of the 2024 Buckeye roster. Sorry, bud. All right. I was racking my brain, truth be told. Who could I compare him to just defend Chad as much as I could? That was about the best I could do.
Well, I got a good comp for Hicks. Remember Mike DeAndrea, who played during the Tressel area?
Yeah.
So DeAndre was another guy who, highly touted, 5-star, impressive-looking athlete, but just never put it together at Ohio State. And I have a mutual friend who's a sorry, not a mutual friend of ours, another friend of ours, also a Buckeye fan, who used to say to DeAndrea, like, man, he used to run really, really fast and hard in the wrong direction. And that was just kind of like not super instinctual. And Hicks also strikes me as that as well. From what I've seen so far of him, he always seems to be a step or two late. And maybe it's because he's playing out of position, and maybe there'll be a role for him as an edge rusher, but a lot of depth there too as well. A lot of playmakers at edge that are going to need snaps. So tough spot for Hicks.
Well, at the end of the day, just because a bunch of jamokes that are, evaluating high school football, and they get a lot of it right. Like, it's not hard to figure out, Jeremiah Smith's a 5-star talent. Come on, maybe the kid was a 3-star talent, right? He's playing bad competition or whatever the case. I'm not saying he doesn't have, worth but man, I mean, you come to a place like Ohio State and all of a sudden, holy shit. I mean, there's just guys that have every bit as much talent as I do up and down the roster, every position. Yep. Sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, we're in year 3 of Hicks. He's kind of running out of opportunities. And unless they're, somebody gets abducted by aliens, as Doug Lee Maurice likes to say, I don't know that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for him this season, outside of special teams and some backup snaps.
Well, and the last thing I'd say is back to the Arvell Reese thing. Just play your best guys, right? And you're right. Like, you're going to need different personnel for different schemes, right? The Wisconsins, the Iowas of the world. But man, when you're playing play your best guys. It's, if Arvell Reese is one of our 3 best linebackers, I want him on the field every freaking snap when we're up in Oregon, right? So
it's a good problem to have. We're in a good position.
Yeah. Totally. Yep. It's first world problems, I think, is what they call that. All right, fellas, listen, I want to put a question to the two of you that I mentioned at the very end of my recap pod on Sunday. I'm going to modify it slightly. Now, after the events of the last 2 weeks, right? Michigan in a clear rebuild after looking unimpressive against Fresno State and in the blowout loss to Texas. Oregon struggling in narrow home wins over Idaho and Boise State. Penn State life and death to beat Bowling Green at home. Iowa failing to hit 20 points in a home loss to unranked Iowa State. Who is the best team left on Ohio State's regular season schedule? CP, I want to start with you.
Well, I mean, I think Oregon's better than what they're playing. I think. I'll be honest with you. I'm gonna say, as of like right now, Nebraska.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I rephrase the question. If Ohio State, if they had to play today, right? Who would give Ohio State the toughest test? And I think I agree with you on that, CP. I'm wavering myself between Penn State and Nebraska, but
yeah,
PVH.
I was going to say Penn State, but I'm telling you what, Rule's got that team like they're like. I was watching a couple things like high locker room speech and but I'm telling you, man, he's got those guys on a whole nother level.
He's a good coach.
But that's I would stick with that pick.
Okay, yep. PVH. Before I go, I want to know what you think.
I think you're both fucking crazy. Come on. I mean, they're 2-0. They've beaten the primetime Buffaloes, who stink, by the way. In fact, I love the CSU Rams to beat Colorado. Colorado is no good, and they beat UTEP. Now, I'm not saying Nebraska's not on the rise, and I'm not saying Rayola's a good quarterback. But if you guys both think a freshman quarterback is going to beat the Buckeyes, or if you think he's the best, if they're the best squad left on our schedule, I'm in. Nah, I'm not there yet. Now,
who is it?
We'll see. We have a few more games. Wins more, but I mean, come on. We know the talent level at Oregon and Penn State is just superior to what Nebraska is, and they may get there, but they're not there yet. They might be in a year or two, but even this year, I'm not buying it.
They'll be 7-0 when they come to the shoe.
So if the game were tomorrow, PBH, which of those
when they come to the shoe, and it'll be crazy.
If the game were tomorrow, which of Ohio State's remaining opponents would concern you the most?
I'm still, dude. I think, Penn State on the road, and as bad as Oregon has looked. And I watched a fair amount of that game. Like, they would have never won that game. I think they run a punt and a kick return back.
Yep.
To win that. Yeah,
The question was
I'm still just
tomorrow.
not there with Nebraska. I'm still not there.
Okay,
with
but
Nebraska.
who's your pick?
That's fine.
I'm not looking at the schedule. I mean, Marshall? Fuck, I don't know. I mean,
Well, all the teams I mentioned, Ohio State is going to play. They're going to play Michigan. They're going to play Oregon. They're going to play Penn State. They're going to play Nebraska and Iowa. And then beyond those 5, on the regular season schedule, there isn't really anyone else worth mentioning right now.
I'm still Penn State.
Penn State. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I would have thought it would have been Oregon. I don't know anymore. And I know we're going to cover this topic in a second, so I don't want to talk about it. But yeah, I mean, it's you're probably right though. It's probably a toss up because we do play at Lincoln, right?
No, we're home against.
Oh, we're home.
We're home against Nebraska,
Yeah.
coming out of a bye.
Now I even feel bad. Yeah, Penn State for sure.
Okay. Yeah, for me, look, if Oregon can get their shit together, they are far and away the most talented team left on the schedule. I mean, the Ducks are 6th in the 24/7 team talent composite. That's actually 5 spots ahead of Penn State. But through 2 games, look, Oregon is having trouble protecting Dylan Gabriel, and they can't run the ball. Oregon is tied up for 120th nationally in sacks allowed. They've given up 7 sacks in 2 games. They're 104th nationally in rushing offense and 113th in yards per rushing attempt. They're only averaging 2.96 yards per carry. They're 59th nationally in total offense. They're 52nd nationally in total defense and 66th in defensive yards per play. About the only thing the Ducks are doing well right now, and PVH, you referenced it, is special teams. They had the 2 kick returns in the second half that fucking saved their bacon against Boise State.
They lost that game.
They're done. They lose that game if it weren't for those 2 kick returns. I wonder if all the talent there just isn't super complimentary because, they went out in the portal and did really well for themselves. They've recruited well. And you also wonder, and we might see a lot of this in the portal era, if, with a lot of portal guys, how bought in are they? I mean, are they there to just to collect an NIL paycheck before heading to the league? Or are they really kind of all in and committed to winning? But I don't know, man. Something's just not adding up when I look at Oregon. There's just too much talent there for them to be struggling this badly. I mean, they were life and death to beat an FCS team at home in their opener. As we sit here today, I think it's probably Penn State. They're the second most talented team on Ohio State's schedule, according to the 24/7 Sports Team Talent Composite. They're at number 11, as I mentioned. But I'm kind of with you there also, CP. I'm Nebraska. If the game were tomorrow with probably the best quarterback they've had in decades in Dylan Raiola, granted he's a freshman, and a legitimately good defense. So here's a question. On a neutral field, Nebraska and Oregon, on a neutral field, who would you like in that game, CP?
Today, I like Nebraska.
I think I might like Nebraska, too.
Oregon should have gotten beat by Idaho.
Yeah.
Let's put it like that way. They should have gotten beat by Idaho.
PVH.
But they didn't.
They didn't. I mean, on a neutral field, Nebraska, Oregon, they play tomorrow. Who do you like in that game? You still picking Oregon?
Yeah, I'm still taking Oregon. And what I thought you were going to say, and so I'll pose this back to if Ohio State's playing Nebraska on Saturday, what do you make that line on a neutral field?
Yeah, I mean, it's 3 touchdowns at least. I would say. Yeah.
So we don't have anybody left on our schedule that's going to give us more of a game than 3 touchdowns.
I mean, I'm looking at Oregon and their struggles to protect their quarterback, and what our strength is up front. They can't run the ball. I don't know. I'm not really good at making the lines. I just think the way teams are playing right now, with the information that we have right now after 2 weeks, and it changes from week to week. I think it's probably Penn State. They played well in the opener against a decent team in West Virginia, but man, they were life and death to finish off Bowling Green at home last week, and Bowling Green was throwing it all over them. They ran for almost 5 yards a carry. I don't like what I've seen out of Oregon at all, and I think if Nebraska were to play both Oregon and Penn State on a neutral field, I'd give the coaching edge to Matt Rule over Lanning and Franklin in that game. Well,
I mean, you sent it on the group text on Sunday, and dude, I'm not completely disagreeing. I'm just not quite there yet.
Sure. Yeah.
I need to see more than them, beating, like I said, Colorado and UTEP.
Right.
So you very well could be on to something. I think it'd be hard, this short into his tenure, but yeah, maybe, they can get there. And the other thing, man, what an abject disaster for the Big Ten last weekend. I mean,
yeah,
Iowa getting beat by Iowa State. I mean, Penn State looked terrible. Michigan gets waxed. I mean,
not a good day.
All the games that we kind of were like, oh, these could be tough games. I mean, Wisconsin hasn't looked good. Man, it was a bad look for the Big Ten last weekend.
I agree. I mean, USC is about the only other team that's kind of playing well right now. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is when we looked at the schedule, what was it, 6 weeks ago, all of us we had a flag on Oregon, we had a flag on the Penn State game, and none of us really thought Nebraska was going to be much of a threat to Ohio State. It's so interesting, 2 weeks in with the new information we have, it's not so clear cut, I think, as it appeared to be, 6 weeks ago. CP, any other comments you want to make on this question here before we move on?
Well, we were talking about like tomorrow, but just a real quick, go back on the Nebraska thing. They could very well be 7-0 when they come into the shoe. And I'd be curious to I would still think it would probably be at least 2 touchdowns, when they come to the shoe. But I mean, it's who knows what could happen between now and then. I would love to see them be 7-0 when they come into the shoe.
Well, they play nobody.
I mean,
I'm just looking at their schedule.
Yeah. I think it's totally on the table. I do think that defense is legitimately good.
We could end up blowing them out. Who knows?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think that's just because Ohio State is that good, that talented, that deep. Nebraska was
super excited for all the games.
Nebraska was a legitimately good defense a year ago. They went on a 4-game losing streak, I think. They lost all 4 of those games by 1 score, 3 of the 4 by a field goal. They led the country in turnovers. That defense had them right there in almost every single game, and they just, because they couldn't take care of the football and they didn't have the quarterback play, they just couldn't finish off. They couldn't. I mean, they might have been a 10-2 team last year, but of course they wouldn't if ifs and buts were candy and nuts.
But you're right about that. How many 1-score losses have they had in the last 4 years? It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's just if you get the quarterback play, you can take care of the football, and you've got the coaching. It feels to me like they're definitely on the rise, and perhaps a little closer, a little bit more of a threat, compared to Oregon and Penn State than maybe we originally thought. All right, so relatedly, I want to know, are we still good with our picks for the Big Ten title game based on what we've seen through 2 weeks? I think we're all probably feeling great about Ohio State being there, but I picked Oregon to be their opponent in that game. Paige and Chad, you both picked Penn State. CP, how are you feeling about that pick right now?
You know what? For all intents and purposes, I'm going to stick with it for now, yes.
Okay, got it. And PBH, how about you? You still feeling pretty solid about that Penn State pick in the Big Ten?
No, they're terrible. I mean, dude, if you're life and death to beat Bowling Green at home, right? No. But I don't know who to put in there yet. I mean, you can make a strong argument for USC or any argument. I guess it's just too early. But yeah, I would have expected. Here's the thing. We rely on experts that do this for a living. To through rankings tell us who should be the best teams, and outside of the top 6 or just the juggernauts, they're just not. They're wrong. So, shit, man. If Lincoln Riley has a legit defense. I mean, that might be it, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so you're sticking with Penn State.
Apparently, great. I haven't seen him take a snap, but he's supposed to be
Miller Moss. So are you sticking with Penn State, or do you want to change it? This is your opportunity to change your pick.
Do I have money on this, or
no? It's just for fun.
Right
now,
Paige I'd like to go back in time too.
Yeah, I'm done with Penn State. That was a dumb idea to begin with. No, I'm USC. I'm on the Trojan bandwagon.
Okay, all right. CP, how about you? You want to change your pick?
I'm going. Yeah, dude. I'll be honest with you. I got a completely just fog right there. I keep forgetting USC, the Big Ten. Blah, blah. I've watched USC play, and I take USC over Penn State. I bumped the fuck out of Franklin, and to knit these Lions.
Yeah, I'm with you guys, and we're going to make this really boring because we're all going to agree. I'm changing my pick as well. I think it's going to be USC, Ohio State for the Big Ten title in early December, and I started feeling that way after watching them beat LSU in the season opener. I think the Trojans are the clear number 2 behind Ohio State in the Big Ten right now. Miller Moss is completing 73% of his passes. They have good skill talent around him, as Lincoln Riley always does. That kid Zachariah Branch is an electric receiver and return man. I really like him. And most importantly, it looks like SC is much improved on defense. Like, they have a real defense. And now maybe Penn State can change our minds about this pick in the coming weeks, but right now the Trojans look like the biggest challenger to the Buckeyes, and I don't think it's particularly close. All right, fellas, it's still very early, as we've noted, but most of the experts will tell you Georgia, Texas, and Ohio State have separated themselves from the rest of the country. But I want to know, and CP, I'm going to start with you. Are there any other teams that you think might join those 3 teams in the top tier of college football by, let's say, November? And who is it?
I would say probably Tennessee.
Tennessee, okay. PVH, how about you? Any other teams?
Tennessee.
Anybody else you think might end up in that top tier with Georgia, Texas, and Ohio State by the end of the season? Maybe we just talked about one of them. Maybe it's USC. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe it is USC. I mean, come on. It's kind of, I just pulled it up. I mean, are we completely discounting Alabama, right? You know? Although I guess they kind of struggled teeny bit last week. I mean,
they were in a 1-point game in the fourth quarter with, I think, South Florida, and then they scored 4 touchdowns in the last 10 minutes of the game. But it was a weird 1-point game, weird result.
I mean, Tennessee's looked pretty good. Miami, maybe. USC, those would be my 3.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Ole Miss, I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. So this is interesting. Right now, and again, we're only 2 games in, but right now, there are only 3 teams in the country that are in the top 10 nationally in total offense and total defense. You guys want to take a guess who those teams are? Top 10 nationally in total defense, total offense. Go ahead, PBH. You said Ohio State?
No, actually, I don't think so. Dude, I have no idea. Georgia, no, Texas, Tennessee, and USC.
Okay, CP, do you want to guess?
This is a tough one.
Not really. Okay.
I'll ride along with whatever you guys think.
Okay. So the teams are Ohio State, Tennessee, and Louisville in the top 10 nationally in total offense and total defense. Now, I'm not going to be buying any Louisville stock. I mean, I don't trust them to stay up there. But I agree with the 2 of you guys. Tennessee right now looks legit. The Vols are 5th nationally in total offense. They're 6th in total defense. They're coming off a 51-10 evisceration of number 24 NC State in a neutral site game in Charlotte last Saturday. Their quarterback, and I'm going to butcher his name, I'm going to try anyway. Their quarterback, Nico Aliava, is an exciting young player. Imi Aliava is a 5-star prospect out of Downey, California. At 6'6", 215 pounds. He was the number 2 overall player in the 2023 class. He's a big dude, 6'6", 215, but he's super athletic. So far this season, he's completed 75% of his passes. He's accounted for 6 touchdowns. I'm keeping my eye on the Vols. I think they could be legit.
Man, their schedule is brutal, though, dude.
Is it? Who would they play? What?
Well, do they have the gold? Or here's a trivia question: they have the Golden Flashes this weekend. Don't cheat. Who are they playing?
The Golden Flashes.
Yep. You should know this.
Toledo.
Close. You're in the right state.
Oh, Kent State.
Kent State.
But
then they play at Oklahoma, Arkansas, Florida. Then they have Bama and Georgia on the schedule. So
where are those games? Where's Bama and Georgia?
Bama's at home, Georgia's on the road.
Oh yeah, it's tough.
So you run that gauntlet. Kudos to you. You're the 1 seed.
Yeah, for sure. Well, right now, and again,
that's rough, man.
That is rough. Georgia, by the way, I think the gauntlet they have to run might even be tougher. Same deal. But no, I agree with you, man. They survived that gauntlet with 2 losses. I don't think they'll be a 1 seed with 2 losses. My pick is Texas. I think Texas is going to come out of the SEC, but I'm keeping my eye on the Vols, man. They could do some damage and might very well make the 12-team field.
Big fan of the coach.
So man, Texas being back to what Texas should be every year, which is perennial top 5 team with the amount of high school football talent they have, man. Like, man, the SEC is just, man, that is a rough deal, and it's always been a rough deal. But my Lord, man, it's next level now.
I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, we were kind of thinking and hoping the Big Ten had made up some ground on the SEC, but man, if Texas is going to be that good, and you still have Georgia, peak Georgia, and Bama right there. And Tennessee, Ole Miss,
no joke.
Ole Miss, yeah, that's right. CP, they're your pick. Ole Miss is to come out of the SEC. How you feeling about that pick? You think they still come out of the SEC?
I mean, after like that beating the Horns put on Michigan, but yeah, I'm gonna still stick with it. Like,
you lay a fiver on it. that much conviction.
Well, let's talk about 3 or 4 weeks from now.
Fair enough. All right, fellas. Now, as we know, the Buckeyes have the weekend off, and it's not a particularly compelling slate of games on Saturday. But there are a few games I think worth talking about. Starting with number 4 Alabama at Wisconsin. The line is Bama minus 16. The over-under is 50.5. This is a noon Eastern kick on Fox. Bama is coming off, we just talked about it, this weird 42-16 win over South Florida in Tuscaloosa. It was a 1-point game going into the fourth quarter, but then Bama scored 28 points in the final 10 minutes to turn that game into a rout. But that was a tight ball game for three-plus quarters. Wisconsin's coming off a pair of uninspiring home wins over Western Michigan and South Dakota. The Badgers were actually trailing in the fourth quarter against Western Michigan. CP, I'm going to start with you. How do you see this game playing out?
You know what? When Luke came into, the hire that came into Wisconsin there, I was like, that's a big-time hire. Thus far, they've had like glimpses, but like he hasn't had like that big win. I'm not by any means saying that they're going to upset Bama this weekend, but I think this is going to be one of those games where everybody's going to be like, oh, okay, so this is why we hired Luke Fickell. The dude, he's a coach. He knows what's up, man. He's going to get this team up and ready. That stadium, I mean, I've been there for like a game or two. It's insane, and I think it's going to be just off the chains on Saturday. And I think they're going to ball with them, man. Like I think they're going to cover.
Okay.
But I think it's going to be a ball game. I think it's going to be a ball game up through the fourth quarter.
You like Bama to win, but they don't cover. That's 16. Is that right?
Right. I like Whiskey to cover. I like Bama to pull it out, somehow at the end of the game.
Okay. PVH, how do you see this game?
I mean, I wish you could see my facial expression, just the deflatedness that came washed over my body when I heard this is the fucking big noon kickoff game. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Wisconsin? Dude, seriously, I'm going to blow up Fox. I can't take it anymore.
I know, dude.
You better get used to it, buddy. They signed a long-term deal.
Yeah, but dude, I mean, honestly, I feel cheated as a fan, right? I want to see that place at night. It would be rocking. It would just be the best atmosphere.
That's a good point. You're right.
Maybe have we ever seen Alabama go on the road early in the season, to a Big Ten school and you're going to play it at noon. Like, it's just unconscionable to me. It just drives me crazy. And, that was the other thing I was going to mention about the Ohio State, game last weekend. Man, there's just more juice there at night. Like, we're big boys. We can stay up past midnight, on Saturday nights. Like, why are you doing this? And I actually thought, I was on board with Wisconsin a little bit, but now I'm not, right? I mean, I think Alabama's too talented. They're going to take the crowd out of it, by 1:30. They're going to be on, Junket Street by 3, and it's just Luke's not going to get it. At night, I'm all on about Wisconsin. No, I'm not. I'm bummed. I'm legitimately mad. I'm bummed. I didn't realize that.
So you like Bama to win and you like Bama to cover?
Now I do. I mean,
Yeah.
I actually, like I said in the text, I in my head, I was like, what would I make that line? Because I knew we were going to talk about it. And I was like 8 or 9, and it was like 16. I'm like, ooh. But now, no.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Alabama.
Yeah, Saban's not there anymore. We'll see if, DeBoer can do what Saban did, which was get his teams up for games like these and really kind of leave no doubt. I think Bama wins. I think they cover. I'm just not impressed with Wisconsin. They don't seem to do anything particularly well. And I think the Tide rolls. You might be right, PBH. Maybe Wisconsin would have more of a chance if this were played at night. But yeah, I like the Tide to roll in this one. All right, in that same noon Eastern window, number 17 Michigan hosts Arkansas State of the FCS on BTN. This line is Michigan minus 23. The over-under is 47.5. Michigan, as we know, is coming off that 31-12 loss at home to Texas, which I don't even think the final score is really indicative of how badly Texas dominated that game. I thought they kind of let their foot off the pedal in the fourth quarter. CP, how do you see this game playing out?
I think they show up and get some things figured out. I don't think they're going to, they're just not that good. That walk-on quarterback, he had, a couple of nice plays, but they lost too many players, and I think they'll obviously win the game. You know what? Actually, I'm going to say they're going to cover this game because it's Arkansas State.
Okay, PVH, how about you? How do you see this game playing out?
Well, so first off, I had no earthly idea that Arkansas actually had 3 FBS schools. You have Arkansas, you have Arkansas State, and they beat Central Arkansas in their first game of the year, 34-31. So who knew? I would be surprised if Arkansas State won this game straight up. Michigan's terrible.
Wow.
It's at noon. I love it. Take the points all day, and it'll just put a nice... The only thing that's going to make up for my dismay at the Alabama-Wisconsin game being on at noon is when Arkansas State wins this game straight up. I'm not betting that. I'm not taking the money line, but Michigan's terrible.
I like it, man. Bold prediction by PVH. I love it. Yeah, after what I've watched the last 2 weeks, I'm firmly on record that Michigan is going to struggle to win 8 games this season. I don't know that they'll struggle in this one. I think they win and probably cover, but this is the third week in a row, PVH, you've made a pick with quite a lot of conviction. I go the opposite direction. You turn out to be right. But fuck it. Just for the sake of variety here in our picks, I'll say Michigan wins and they cover. Nice. All right. Let's move on to number 9, Oregon at Oregon State, the Civil War, as they call it. The line is Oregon minus 16.5. The over/under is 50.5. Very similar to Bama, Wisconsin, by the way. The betting line in the over/under. This is a 3:30 p.m. Eastern kick on Fox. PVH, you gotta love that. Now, as we've already discussed, Oregon has not looked good through the first 2 weeks of the season, struggling mightily in their opener against an FCS team and then nearly losing the following week to Boise State. A normally bitter, hotly contested rivalry has even more juice now thanks to recent conference expansion. Oregon State was one of the 2 only remaining teams in the Pac-12, and the word is they were none too pleased when Oregon left for the Big Ten. So I think there's going to be a lot of fireworks in this game, probably a lot of fisticuffs. PVH, let's start with you, because you've been calling the upset in this game for weeks. Is that where you still stand?
Well, okay. I thought there was a chance, right, that Oregon, when we came into Eugene, might not be undefeated. And this is a tough game. This is like playing Michigan, third game of the season.
Yeah.
So I'm still going to roll with that, especially, after watching Oregon last weekend. Yeah, man. Oregon State 2-0. They beat Idaho State, San Diego State. I would say this. Either Oregon State wins straight up or Oregon kills them would be, they finally get their shit together and play a good, solid game. But I'm still going to roll with the Beavers to win this game, and Oregon's going to take their first loss of the season.
You're calling two colossal upsets on Saturday.
I'm liking all the dogs. I told you guys on the text. I'm liking dogs this weekend.
I love it. CP, how do you see this one playing out?
I don't think Oregon's going to go up there and lose in their home state. But I think it's going to be another nail biter for the Ducks, man. And I think it's going to be a time where they're in the locker room after the game just being very lucky that they got the hell out of there with a win. And there's going to be a lot of reflection time going on Sunday. But I think Oregon pulls it out.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a close one.
So another stay of execution for the Ducks in this game. You like Oregon to win, but not to cover that 16.5. Okay.
I will say, Jackson and I went and visited both those schools. Oregon State, it's a cool campus. It's a big stadium. So there's going to be a lot of energy at that place, right? It's not like they're going and it's like 23,000. I mean, I think that thing probably holds 50, 60,000. So Oregon better bring their A game or they're going to lose.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen lots of upsets in that stadium in Corvallis over the years. Yeah. I like the Beavers in this one too. Oregon they're primed for the upset. They've flirted with disaster the last two Saturdays. I think they finally trip up in this game against what is sure to be a very motivated Oregon State squad. And I think we're going to see, like I said, a lot of extracurriculars after the whistle in this one. I think it's going to be testy, to say the least.
Nice.
All right, fellas, listen, that was a fine effort for a bye week. Why don't we end things there for our listeners? I'm not sure if I'll do my usual Sunday pod, given that the Buckeyes have the weekend off. If there's a bunch of chaos on Saturday, maybe I will, but you can definitely count on a preview of Ohio State's next opponent, Marshall, next Thursday, September 19th, from the three of us. Until then, thanks so much for listening, and go Bucks. You've been listening to the South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast. Follow us on X at South_Stands.